Who here wants to be the next neighborhood barbecue champ? Well, follow along, because if you follow these 4 easy steps, before you know it, you might end up becoming the next family or neighborhood sausage god. Come along, stick around to the end. Alright guys, don't mind the backdrop. Mind you, this is a house, not a studio. So, step number 1 is definitely tools. Now, I'm not saying every single thing that I'm getting ready to tell you is an absolute requirement, but having a halfway decent set of knives is a real good option, especially when you're in the process of sausage making. You know, it's a lot of meat cutting, either separating the fats for the proper ratio, or just making some nice small cuts. These are not overly expensive either, guys. I think these are only like $20 knives. Honestly, I just keep them sharp and they work a charm. We'll go to that next piece of equipment. You see it over to the side? Stand mixer. Again, not a requirement, but for me, I use that KitchenAid attachment, and that is my actual grinder. Maybe one of these days we'll upgrade to a big boy grinder, and it'll make my life a little bit easier, and it'll help process meat faster. But again, you don't necessarily need it either. There is plenty of people out there that literally mince their meat with just a couple pairs of knife and then mix by hand. So any of these tools that I'm using right now, it's out of convenience and it's to save time. And honestly, with sausage making, time is money. Now, why would I say that? Well, because if I'm wasting a bunch of time mixing everything manually and chopping everything manually, I'm running a risk of ruining the integrity of the sausage, because you know, your temperatures are actually very important, which we'll get back into the temps here shortly. Let's move you over a little bit. Alright, so this was a side kit that I had actually got for my KitchenAid. And again, you don't necessarily need a KitchenAid. You don't necessarily need one of these either. This is just a basic meat grinder. Works amazingly. And then right next to it, what we have is a nice scale. Now, if I had to surrender all of my equipment and go down to just a couple cheap pairs of knives and lose everything else, I would say that scale is the one thing I wouldn't want to replace, because it helps you isolate your ratios, you know, per weight. And I got to tell you, it's if you want to get your seasonings correct, knowing the weight of everything is very, very critical. Otherwise, you might end up over or under seasoning, which I may or may not done many times. So this scale, priceless. This grinder, not necessary, but it's a great piece of equipment nonetheless. And last but not least, having a good sausage extruder comes in handy. The one for the KitchenAid, I have used it before. It does work, but it's a little bit more time consuming. It doesn't cooperate as much. I'll post down in the description below. This was a cheaper model. I think it only cost me like 120 bucks. It can handle about 6-7 pounds of sausage at a time, and like I said, it just ends up working out quicker. Another area of consideration, it's not really equipment, but it's more for method. You're going to want to get your casings, unless you're doing a non-casing sausage, which you can do. I've done it with brown and serve. I'll make an episode for that one of these days down the road. These are 3 varieties of casings. We have 2 different types of cellulose casing. One is actually an edible cellulose, kind of like the same thing you'd get a Slim Jim or a lot of store-bought sausages in. These type casings are designed for smoking, you know, like your hot dogs and whatever. And, you know, honestly, you take these casings off, you peel them right off of your meat, and then you have a caseless hot dog or sausage or what have you. These are actual natural casings. These are actually soaking for our episode to come. And this, well, it's the turtle. I mean, everybody likes turtles, right? Alright, step number 2, temp. Temp is beyond critical. One of the biggest mistakes I made when I first got into making sausage was watching, like, let's say a Chud clip or 2 guys in a cooler, both those guys are like, they are sausage gods. I would start watching, pick up a little, and then go craft and make mistakes, come back and rewatch and go, oops. I'm trying to prevent you guys from having to deal with those kind of growing pains, because it can be pretty expensive after a while. So temps with sausage making are critical in more than one phase. So let's say I got a nice pork shoulder, which is what we're going to bring into the show shortly. I've chopped it up into small pieces, you know, stuff that's manageable and it's going to burn right through that KitchenAid. And if I let it get too warm, the fats are going to start to smear and separate. Now, I've heard the phrase 1,000 times and didn't understand. Basically, what it will cause is it won't actually adhere to the inside of that casing, which will leave little pockets where air can form, grease can pool, it can cause bursting. We don't want that. We want it to adhere, okay? So your temperature is very, very important. So every time I make sausage now at this point, I have a thermometer. I am not sponsored by these guys. I'm not sponsored by anything that I'm showing you guys today. But this is a real nice instant read by Thermopro. It wasn't very expensive. It's only about 40 bucks now. It's not the top of the line, guys, but bang for buck, oh my God, you can't beat it. I've also got another set from them. This is a two-piece setup, so I can actually monitor the temperature of my grill if I'm smoking, or my smoker if I'm smoking. I can monitor the temperature of the inside of that unit and inside of the actual meat, which is very important too. But we'll get into finished temperatures later. During your process, after you've cut up your meat, it's a great idea to probe it, see what the temperature is, and let's say if it's in, 38 to, 40, 45 degrees, put it in a tray in a single layer. If you do it in a small layer, it's going to chill quicker. Get it in your freezer and check it about every 10 to 15 minutes. And once that's dropped back down below that 35-degree mark, now it's actually going to grind a lot easier. It's going to be easier to work with. You're just going to get a better overall product. So step number 2 is definitely own your temperatures. And like I said, with it, I would highly recommend actually getting a decent instant read thermometer. You don't have to buy one that's 300 bucks or 200 bucks. This one, like I said, was 40 bucks, and I've been beating on it for over a year now. And it's held up, and it's helped me create phenomenal barbecue. So get it on a decent thermometer, okay? Let's go to step number 3. All right, guys. Step number 3 is seasoning. When I make this next batch, I'm not going to go through all of my seasonings that I'm going to be using because this is just a unique one-off sausage. I will put them down in the description for you guys, though. Each type sausage is going to have its own unique blend, and it's worthy hopping on the interwebs and finding what people are doing and utilizing their ideas because they've already tried it, it's already worked. But if there was one ingredient or seasoning that I got to tell you is absolutely critical, it's none of these, believe it or not. It's this. That's salt. If you screw up the salt ratio in your sausage, I absolutely guarantee you're going to be disappointed with the end process. It ends up muting it, and that's not good. Because remember, salt itself is a flavor carrier. It's supposed to enhance everything else, kind of like MSG. It makes all those flavors pop. And I have done it before, where I got my whole entire batch cased and went, "Whoops, I totally forgot that." And it takes quite a bit. An average pound of sausage, you can put up to a teaspoon of it. And you guys have been eating sausage for a long time. There was nothing wrong with it. But out of all the seasonings that I could say are important, salt is definitely the most important. So keep that in mind. Like I said, I'll slap in my recipe in the description below for the ones that I'm making today. We are making pizza sausage today, by the way. Alright guys, here is our meat. Need to add a little bit to it, but what we have here is I bought a twin pack of boneless pork shoulders. Ran a bunch of it through a meat slicer because I had a requirement from another clip. But I tell you what, not saying you need a meat slicer, but if you have one, it's going to make your life even easier. I basically have these cut at about 3/4 inch thick. Probably going to have to add just a little bit to this because I just scaled it out on the handy dandy scale that I recommended. And yeah, they're a little light. But this right here, it may seem small, but when I cube this all up, it'll be perfect and it'll feed through that grinder I have without an issue. And it'll also get to a cold temperature quicker. Alright, meat. Like I said, guys, this doesn't have to be exacting. This isn't rocket science. We're just looking for something a little bit uniform, and something that'll be easy to send through that grinder. The less work it does, the longer your grinder will last, the better your sausage will come out. So this is what I'm shooting for the whole entire set. Alright guys, after what felt like a few minutes, which it really was, here we go. The whole thing's cut up. We got 7 pounds on the dot. All of them more or less the same thickness. And for those that don't know or don't remember, the reason why we're shooting for the same thickness is so I can get to the same cold temperature at the same time. Because remember guys, in the barbecue world, we finally have a victory. It is the width that matters, not the length. Alright, I'll probably bring that up more than once during this clip. I've actually proven it more or less with a brisket. I did a whole half brisket where I cut it right down the middle, and it took just as much time to cook that as it would a whole packered brisket. So, proving, like I said, it's the width, not the length that matters. So that's a win for us, guys. So what I'm going to do is separate these into about 3 trays because I don't want them crowding each other. They don't need to just be one single layer. I might go around 2. But we'll spread it out, spread the love, pop them in the freezer, come back after about a half hour, temp them, see what we're looking like. If you really wanted to be froggy about it, if you had a wireless Insta-Read thermometer or the wireless thermometer like the one I showed you earlier, you could easily put a few of these on the probe and stuff it in your freezer and get an actual alert when it's at the right temperature. It's kind of a lazy way, but hey, I dig it. It works. Alright, so we'll be back when we're ready to cut it up. Alright guys, now that we've gotten into tools, temperature, seasoning, we're going to take a break from the learning curve and just go into crafting. This isn't necessarily a step, it's just part of the actual equation. Something that you have to do regardless of technique. So now I've gotten my meat chilled out, and we're actually just going to get right into it. I'll probably do this in a couple batches so I can keep it refrigerated along the way, pardon the noises. But this should come out real easily. Should be next to no effort, and I should get a real nice grind out of it. Yeah, I'm not even having to plunge it down to get it to go through. That's a real good sign. Alright guys, time for protein extractification. Anyways, I would definitely recommend starting this at a low, slow speed so you don't start tossing stuff everywhere. I know this being at about 3.5 pounds, it's pretty much the vertical limit. It's not that the motor can't handle it, the bull can't. So kind of have to babysit it. It's no big deal. I've already gotten my first batch done. It's definitely the biggest batch I've made with this yet. But, you know, hey, like I said, know your equipment. At this stage, this is where it pays to have everything prepped too. Like, I already had my seasoning divided out and my liquid set aside. This could take a pretty decent amount of liquid. It could take 10% of my volume. So, this time around we did red wine. Next time around I do a pizza sausage like this. I want to try to use a marinara. I do have some cheese and vegetables that I'm going to put in this, but I don't want to do it in the actual mixer. I'd rather mix that by hand to be a little bit more gentle to it. So when you bite into it, you can actually still see it, feel it, taste it. Alright, it's going to be a few more minutes of this. Once this gets sticky to the touch where I can get a patty stuck to my hands, then I will have succeeded with the protein extraction, and then we'll be back when we start stuffing. Peace! Always remember to do a test piece too, guys. I don't tend to like to add the vegetable and cheese to it before that. I just want to taste the seasoning. And this right here, not only is it nice and juicy, the texture's perfect, and it's got just that nice little bite of heat from those red chili flakes. It's a phenomenal Italian sausage just as is. Alright guys, last step before casing. Gonna have to massage this around. I still have my other batch in the freezer. Take about half this cheese. This is just dry mozzarella. It should be able to stand being grilled without just pouring out. All I'm going to do is just mix, 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 and acclimate this until it's ready to be put in my sausage extruder over here. Alright guys, we're getting right through this. glad you're sticking around. Like I said, stick around to the end, because that last step is the critical step. You get that wrong, you're going to be messing up all of your sausage, and then you don't get to be the neighborhood champ of barbecue. Alright, so what we're going to do now, we're going to get this guy filled right on up, right up to the brim. Sitting over here backwards. Definitely going to want to press this down too and make sure you're getting all the air out of it. You don't want air pockets in your sausage, you guys. It's not a good thing. Alright, got about 4 or 5 pounds in this right now. Let's get on to that next step. Alright guys, let's wet our horn, and then we'll get that casing on. I think I'm using the medium size horn. Can't remember how many millimeter that is. Like say it's like 18. This is probably arguably the hardest part of this whole entire process. But these casings soaked overnight. They're good to go. They smelt good. I didn't use my traditional ones. I found them actually at a store near me. So we'll see how these ones behave. Remember guys, the casing should go on pretty easy. You shouldn't be fighting them. So if you start fighting them, you're probably using the wrong size horn. And also, if you need to add a little bit more moisture to it, do it up, not a problem. And let's get this guy threaded on. This one's got a little bit of resistance, but I'm not really worried about that. A little bit's not a problem. Just putting up a big fight, I would definitely switch out to a smaller one. But this one's gliding on nice and easy now. We get to the end, we'll start getting the sausage down, and we get the sausage to the tip. We will tie it off. We're going to repeat this process several times. If you want to, you could load up more than one. I don't like doing that. Especially if I have a good long one. I'd rather just start off with one at a time. These aren't huge batches that I'm doing anyways, and my whole entire other container is in the freezer still staying chilled. I don't want to leave it in too long because I don't want it hard as a rock when I try to send it through. That'll create its own complications. Wow, this is the world's longest tube. Probably almost enough to do this whole entire batch. And remember guys, when you're done with these, you can always dry them out a little bit, repack them in salt, and get them back in a container and slap them in your fridge. And they'll be good to go for quite some time. Alright, let's get... Alright, so we're getting a little bit of air in here. I'm guessing it's because of the coarseness of my ingredients. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use the whole entire casing and then individually wrap these. Gives me a little bit more wiggle room. I'll probably have to poke these too. These casings are a little bit different than the ones I'm used to. The ones I usually get are from Eater. But the past few ones that I've had a little bit of issue with, and these were convenient because they were at a store right next to me. Remember, you don't have to rush this process. I'm seeking a certain level of firmness. So as these go through my hand, I'm squeezing it with my pinky and palm. And after a while I'm doing this enough, you kind of start knowing what you're looking for. But I'm just desperately trying not to burst any of these. Because yeah, I haven't really blown out any yet, even from my start. So, don't want to wreck that record right now. But, like I said, when I get done with these, I will individually wrap them up. And we'll go from there. Alright. Alright, that batch went really smooth. There's no air pockets in this one whatsoever. Still has a nice firmness to it. When I'm doing short tubes like this is much easier. I actually end up spinning them all the same direction because I can get away with it. It's such a small set. That way nobody comes untangled. Not overly concerned with the actual length of these. These aren't. This isn't a competition. At the end of the day, they're all going to get eaten and they're all going to cook at about the same rate as long as they're the same thickness. Which we had mentioned before. When I get down to my last one, idealistically I'll end up with a real small one that'll be the same thickness but small in length, and that one I could use to temp when I'm cooking these guys. It's like a sacrificial sausage, but because it's the same width, it'll work perfectly fine. Alright. Alright guys, well, that's 7 pounds of sausage, and that'll be all she wrote for today. We're going to put her in the refrigerator, rest her overnight, and we'll be back tomorrow to finish it up. Stick around. Alright guys, last tip and last step. For starters, I would learn sausage 5 pounds at a time. That's the best tip I can give you, and I'm still learning as well. But each and every single time, we get a little better. Our sausage comes out better, tastes better, it's more juicier, the texture is better. This one was a win. My biggest regret about this one is the cheese didn't really work out the way I wanted it to. I'm starting to understand why they used that super high temp dried out cheese. Definitely going to look into that. Yeah, so I would definitely do work 5 pounds at a time. Not that wrecked the sausage by any means. I mean, in between all the other flavors of different things that I added to it, between the bell pepper, the pepperoni, the mushrooms, it's still a super delicious, juicy sausage. I mean, you couldn't ask for more. But yeah, I'll do my research in on that a little bit better. But the actual last step that I would recommend, since you've already put up with this whole entire video, I'm sure there's very few of you, but for those who have, if you're patient enough to watch this clip in duration, you're definitely going to be patient enough to learn sausage. It's a lot of trial and error. And yeah, it's a heck of a learning curve. But at the end of the day, we pull you down for a shot. I'll show you why we do this. At the end of the day, when you get to make a product like this, why not? I mean, I'm not squeezing this, not even a little bit. Let's see how that snap is. The infamous snap. That's a damn good sausage. Well, like I usually say, guys, make it.